Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
I sometimes like to go online and see what people are arguing about, and what people have been most recently arguing about is Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. And it's been, I think, unfortunate to see a fan base pick one of those guys and decide that they want to tear down the other just to promote the other guy, right? You know, I've seen people tear down or try to tear down anything that has been spectacular that Abdul Carter has accomplished in college, and in an attempt to build up Travis Hunter. And I've seen people do the same thing in favor of Abdul, to tear down Travis, to pump up Abdul. And the reality is, you don't need to do none of that shit. The truth is, between Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, if the Browns get to take one of those players at 2, that's a great spot for them. That's a great pick for them. Travis Hunter would be a great selection for the Cleveland Browns. Abdul Carter would be a great selection for the Cleveland Browns. It's fine to have preferences, but when you find yourself trying to enforce your preference on other people, that's when it gets to a point to where I find to be annoying. So those arguments I just don't find to be useful, because I don't think you need to be in a position where you're worried that the Browns are going to do anything with either of those two guys, because whatever decision they make would be fine for me. But there is one decision that the Browns could make with the number 2 overall pick that would trouble me. And it's not taking a quarterback like I think a lot of people are going to assume, even though I do have my issues with taking a quarterback. I'm not going to act like I don't understand why that could happen, right? But the one thing, the absolute thing that I don't want to see the Browns do, or at least I'm afraid that the Browns are going to do, is trade that number 2 overall pick so far back that they don't have an opportunity to take one of those 2 players, right? For me, as long as the choice is Abdul, Travis Hunter, cool. Make it happen. I'm fine with it. I'm in a dream scenario. But if you trade back and we can't go either, I'm not going to love that. Now, I'm not anti-trade back. I do think we tend to overrate trade backs, though. And my biggest problem with trade backs is the logic and the confidence behind it, because it's flawed on a fundamental level that nobody ever addresses. What is this fundamental flaw that nobody addresses? Well, when you talk to somebody about trading back, the logic usually is the reason you trade back is because the more picks, the better chance you have to hit on a player. And if you look at the draft like a lottery or a classical probability question, where each outcome is as equally as likely as the next, then yes, that strategy makes sense. But the draft isn't a lottery with random odds. No matter how many times people try to tell you, it's not strictly a crapshoot. The draft is a lot more predictable than that. Doesn't mean the draft can be perfectly predicted, but it's a lot more predictable than that. For example, if you look at the guys who have been drafted in the first round, you compare them to the guys who've been drafted like in the third round, the first round sample is going to be better than the third round sample by a significant margin, because usually the players who go in the first round are a lot better than the players who usually go in the third. Doesn't mean there's not outliers. Every once in a while, we've all seen the outliers, but it does mean that the earlier your pick, the better the chance you have to take a better player. That means the draft has subjective probability, which means which means the fundamental flaw with that logic is that more picks doesn't necessarily mean a better chance of hitting on a player if you're getting rid of picks that are at the early part of that draft pool. The context surrounding a trade back matters a great deal. And again, I think trade backs are fun for mock draft scenarios, and I think trade backs make sense in certain specific spots if you know you're going to be able to get guys you still covet once you trade back. But if you're just trading back to trade back and accumulate assets, that kind of directionless trading back always tends to backfire, in my opinion. Let's look at a recent trade back from like 2020 as an example. In the 2020 draft, the New England Patriots decided to trade back. They used that pick and the original third round pick they had to move up to pick 60. With pick 60, they took Josh Uche. Then later, they traded up to take Dalton Keene in the third round. And to get Dalton Keene, they traded their original fourth, a fourth round pick that they got in the pick 60 trade, and then a 2021 sixth round pick. So they got Kyle Duggar, Josh Uche, and Dalton Keene for a first, 2/3, 2/4, and a 2021 six. The combined approximate draft value for these players, and if you remember, that is the metric I use to judge Andrew Berry's ability to draft, to handle free agency from that video. But the combined approximate draft value of those three players that they drafted, about 34 approximate value points that the New England Patriots benefited from. The value of all of the picks that they traded, right? The first, the 2/3, the fourth, and the 2021 six, 64, which means they got about 30 less points than average from all of that maneuvering than they could have gotten if they just stood there and used the picks that they got. And here's what I mean, right? They did all of that. They got Kyle Duggar, Josh Uche, Dalton Keene out of all of that. And that's what they netted from that one pick. They could have also just took Brandon Ayuk and been much happier. There is something undervalued about the concept of having a bird in the hand. If you're not familiar with that phrase, it's basically, do you value what is in front of you as much as you value what could be? One of my least favorite Twitter conversations of all time, or some of my least favorite Twitter conversations of all time, tend to be around that concept, right? Like the famous, would you take $1 million or a dinner with Jay-Z question, or what was it, the 800 credit score, or $1 million in cash right now question, right? And it usually revolves around the same concept. Do you want the value you know you can get, or do you want something that doesn't have as concrete of a value, but theoretically could net you more? I am a more practical person. I admit that. I live a very practical life. I'm not somebody who loves impractical stuff. I don't know if you guys have picked that up about me. I'm very practical. So whenever I see questions like that, I just go, take the money, right? And trade backs are that same question, right? Do you want that really, really good player you know you can just draft right now? Or do you want to get some extra picks and potentially get 4 players that could be way better than that one player? I am a bird in hand man. Give me the one dude that's good. And maybe my Browns fandom has shaped this because I've watched the Browns fall for this trick time and time again. Right, where we did this with Julio Jones and whoever else, right? We just trading picks. We traded the Deshaun Watson pick. We could have just got a quarterback, Deshaun Watson, before he stunk and been fine. But no, we traded back. And yeah, we got a couple of players out of that. But, you know, we ultimately didn't fix the question that we've been trying to answer for like 25 years. Bird in hand. That is what I want the Browns to take advantage of, right? You have Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter in front of you. That is the bird in hand. Unless somebody's willing to offer you a future first-round pick, I see no need to trade back, because the difference in this draft between picking at 2 and picking at 7, I think is rather drastic. It's the difference between being able to select a blue chip player like a Jamar Chase or having to slide all the way back and taking a chance on somebody more risky like Kadarius Toney. If the Bengals had traded out of the top 10 to get more value and said, hey, we'll just get a wide receiver after that, they would have been left with like Kadarius Toney or Rashad Bateman. There's a big difference between that, right? Jamar Chase, Kadarius Toney, Rashad Bateman. I think there's a similar difference at the top of this draft with the blue chip prospects that are available versus what you might get at 7. Not saying there's not going to be good players taken past 7, but the odds that you hit become a lot more stingy than they would if you're just taking a Travis or an Abdul, who I think are uniquely good prospects. Not saying those two are guarantees, just saying that they have a better chance than most to be good in the NFL. That's what I hope the Browns avoid. I don't want the Browns to trade out the top 10 to pick up some extra picks just so they can have more bodies on the roster. I want the Browns to use this pick at 2 to get another person on this team who can be in the all-pro conversation. Because all of our all-pros, all of our pro bowlers outside of Greg Newsome and JOK have been from 2017 draft, 2018 draft, 2014 draft. We need to get some younger all-pro caliber players on this roster. And how you get younger all-pro caliber players on this roster, you do stuff like use the number 2 overall pick to take the best player available. Bird in hand. These aren't guarantees to be all-pro caliber players, but Travis Hunter, his college resume is consistent with players who tend to become that. Not saying it's a guarantee, but it's a better shot than most. Same thing with Abdul Carter. His college resume, his tape is consistent with players who can become all-pro players. Not saying it's a guarantee, but it's a chance. He has a better chance than most. I hope the Browns don't fall into the trap of falling too much in love with potential and understand what's in front of them. Hope they demonstrate some practicality this offseason. And I think they will, because like the Browns aren't a dream-heavy organization. I don't think Andrew Berry is a very fall in love with the dream of something guy. I think he is a very practical person at his core. But we'll see what happens. You know, I think this is the year for a more practical choice for the Cleveland Browns. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being practical, especially when you're in the situation the Cleveland Browns are in. Practicality will probably get you through a tough spot here. That's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Everybody have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.